This is going to be so much cooler than your lunar module.
So I was thinking I nail it to the old lunar module.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So I could make it get real cool.
Okay.
Welcome to a Rocket Playhouse edition of John Builds Things. My son and I found an old Make magazine video about a dad who built his boys a rocket playhouse and mission control station. Obviously my son immediately wanted one, and was certain his dad could make it happen. Who am I to say no to that? So I started sketching out ideas in my notebook, and then fired up Fusion once I had a concept I liked. The idea took inspiration from the original, but I literally leveled up the design by making this a 2-level structure. I'd abandoned some of the things that seemed a little tedious to keep it functional, like power hatch, robotic arm, and the much more complex set of switch connections, focusing more on the structure and the play. With the design established and approved from both my son and my wife, I started assembly by first breaking down the 2x3 lumber into the cuts I needed. In this project I went with 2x3s over 2x4s, because with this many boards, the slight cost savings adds up, and 2x3s are plenty sturdy for this project. The way I framed it, there's not a lot of weight pushing across any screw connections, so shear strength isn't as much of a concern here either. To construct it, I assembled the front and back separately, and then connected them with cross pieces. Later, I disassembled those cross pieces to transport the frame to our basement. I also added some diagonal cross bracing pieces to add rigidity to the frame. There's an architectural concept called the duck or the decorated shed, meaning you could build a complex shape to closely resemble some literal thing like a duck, or you can start with a shed, meaning a basic structure, and add elements to convey or suggest a literal thing, again such as a duck. I tried to take the decorated shed approach as much as possible. You could easily repaint this and modify some little details, just to make it look like any ordinary playhouse. It made assembly very straightforward. Lastly, I added a coat of white paint just to protect the wood a bit, in case any showed through. I wasn't sure what I was going to do for the interior at this point, so this was sort of a just in case. Looking back, it was probably unnecessary. In between frame assembly, I laser cut the hatch and window openings so they'd have clean edges. This is just fiberboard from Home Depot. It's great having access to a Big Thunder CO2 laser at my local makerspace. As much as I want my own laser, I'm spoiled now with the size of this one, and obviously owning something this big is impractical for a hobbyist like myself. Also, while assembly was in progress, I 3D printed several parts for the structure, including engine bells for small RCS thrusters to go on the outside, window trim to hide the transition to the acrylic, and a handle for the hatch. Back to assembly. With the frame together, I started cutting down a sheet of OSB for flooring. Between the sturdiness of the frame and the strength of the OSB, there's no flex in this, so hopefully my boys will get many years out of it. Next, I started cutting down big sheets of fiberboard for the exterior paneling. Nothing here at this stage gets actually attached to the frame because I'm going to move it soon, so this is all just dry fitting. To get the side paneling sized, I just clamped stock sheets to the frame, traced the outline with a pencil, and made the cuts with a circular saw freehand. The edges had fairly tight fits, but I'd hide the imperfections later with trim. The only real tight precision needed at this stage were the openings for the hatch and the window, which I already took care of on the laser cutter. For the windows, they're getting trimmed out with those 3D printed parts anyway. I just didn't trust myself to cut a decent circle with a jigsaw. However, those printed parts, even now, are showing a little too much wear. Maybe I'll make some new window trim in the laser cutter and post an update. Let me know if you have suggestions for how to do it better. Following these steps, I started disassembling the frame off camera to move it downstairs. There's no way I could build this in place because with all the wood and fiberboard cutting, it'd be a dust disaster. Now down in the basement, I started reassembling. I numbered the cross pieces to make it easy for quick reattaching, and then I laid down the OSB and attached it with some nails. On top of the OSB, I put down 2 off-cut sheets of industrial carpeting. Shout out to Sterling Carpet Supply for giving me these pieces for free. Once that carpet was stapled down, I cut the pass-through opening in the second floor and folded down the material to cover up part of the wood in the pass-through. Later I'll cover up the rest with interior fabric. In the original video that inspired me to do this project, he used moving blankets to give the ship a realistic spaceship feel. So I went the same route and ordered a big box of them from Amazon. It worked out great because they are cheap, pretty sturdy to handle being pulled taut and stable, but still cuts easily. And they definitely do give the interior a real spaceship feel. What was a little difficult was fitting some of the fabric into the weird corners and angles on the side. It was starting to get pretty tight in there for a large grown man to maneuver, all while my very excited 4-year-old was playing job foreman and directing me on what to do next. I think he and I watched Apollo 13 about a dozen times this summer because he was just so excited. Eventually, I found the best approach for the interior was to pull it taut, tuck the excess behind the wall, and get one staple in before fastening down the whole edge. There are definitely some rough spots, but it's dark enough inside that you don't really see them. Once I started doing the first floor ceiling, I was able to pull some material up through the pass-through to staple and hide all the wood, and make it look fairly seamless. Back in my workshop, I started painting all the exterior paneling with some leftover white ceiling paint. It took about 2 to 3 coats to get a nice smooth finish, and it was dry to the touch after a few hours. After the hatch was dry enough, I attached all the hardware. The handle and the piano hinge are just bolted on, but the window assembly is glued. Again, the window didn't turn out super great because the glue fails with the hatch slamming shut constantly, and the 3D print curves don't align all that well. It's a little hard to see in this video, but it sticks out to me. Again, let me know what you would do instead. Once the paint was fully dry after a day or so, I began attaching it all to the frame with my nailer. To hide the edges, I used this flexible trim material. It's got double-sided tape backing, and it's pretty strong, so it was just a matter of unrolling it, bending it to the right shape, and giving it a good firm press to adhere. Off camera at some point I attached the mock thruster assembly. I had the intention of making the red engines glow using red LEDs, but I ran out of time. Maybe that's a future video update as well. Despite my fake thrusters not being functional, the whole thing really started to look like a spaceship. As a final touch to the exterior, I printed the NASA worm logo on my Makerspace's vinyl printer and cutter. At some point, we need to name this vessel, so I can display that here too. Let me know if you have suggestions for a name. Following the completion of the main structure, I turned to the control panel inside. Now, the original version of this from Make that inspired this project had a very complex assembly of switches and readouts and everything, and I was just not up for that level of soldering. So I limited the total number of connections I was making, but improvements in microcontroller tech let me have a little more fun with the software. I cut my control panel design on a laser cutter and printed the panel using the UV printer. For this version, I was more proficient with the UV printer, and I'm much happier with the outcome. In the first iteration of a spaceship control panel, I used a piece of clear acrylic because that's what I had on hand. But I did not understand I needed to configure the printer to lay down a layer of white ink first for the other inks to show through. It looked fine because I backed it with another panel, but this round I used a piece of translucent white acrylic, and it looks much better. Additionally, I refined the design to have blocked out sections and better labeling, resembling real cockpit controls. Despite not wanting to go as crazy as the original panel, I did want to up the ante a little bit with more switches, displays, lights, etc. over my previous control panel, and I loved how he used a bass shaker to give the rocket some realism. So I edited some old NASA tracks and clips from Apollo 13 to add some deep bass rocket sounds and explosions to really take advantage of that shaker. Soldering and testing this took a while, but I love the outcome. Like I said, I wanted to have a bit more fun with the software, so it has a free play mode that just plays the various sound clips I edited, like the original rocket control panel, but now it also has 2 game modes to simulate docking and landing. In those games, you use the joystick and throttle to control attitude and speed. Here it is in its final form. We're in here just about every weekend and many, many weeknights. My son absolutely loves playing Rocket. He can't wait for his little brother to be old enough to play in there with him. But for the time being, having mom or dad or babysitter as co-pilot will suffice.
I'll take you to my spacecraft.
20 seconds
Does
and
this
counting.
launch?
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
Can we put this
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program.
Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program with the pitch Apollo 11 on
Should we start the oxygen tanks next?
Plus 30 seconds.
Yeah. No.
Roll complete and the pitch is programmed. One Bravo.